Great Caesar's ghost, Mr. Kent. Do you think you can influence people like Superman? Hello again, everybody. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, lead, and inspire. And today we're continuing with our fourth entry into the Superman series, talking about what superpowers you can have so that you can become a more super person. And today our focus is going to be on influence, so you can be a super influencer. And we're going to get a lot of help today from Dr. Robert Cialdini, who's the author of a classic book called, unbelievably so, Influence. So let's get started right away. Okay, Mr. Cialdini tells us that there are 6 different areas to focus on as far as influence are concerned. We've talked about a lot of these things in some of our other videos, but let's go over them and let's use the structure Mr. Cialdini lays out for us. All right, first of all, the first one is reciprocity. If you want to have influence with people, help them to become their best self. What do I mean by reciprocity? All right, well, one of the things, if you're walking and you meet somebody, smile at them. Smile with your eyes. If you smile, in most cases they'll smile back. If you don't smile, guess what? They're not going to smile. Well, when you see somebody, say good morning. When you say good morning, what's the only polite thing to do? Is to say good morning back. People want to become their best selves. All right, let me give you a different example of reciprocity. When you're working with somebody, one of the guys that I work with, we work together and we kind of share duties, and I get in there before he gets into work. And when I got in there before he did, I would do a certain amount of work. He would always make sure that he did as much work as I did. So what I did influenced what he did. And if I hadn't done a whole lot, then he didn't feel particularly motivated to do a whole lot. So it's leading by example is another way of saying that. When people see the leader do the actual physical work, they're more apt to do it. Now, I had a scenario once where we had a situation where there was a fire in the building where I was working, and they called everybody in to come help clean up. And so I'm there, I'm cleaning up, I'm one of the first people to arrive, and the person that's the boss of the whole building comes over and says, you know, if I wasn't dressed like this, I would be up there helping you. How many times have I heard that person say something like that? If I wasn't this, if I didn't have a meeting to go to, if I didn't have that, all right, enough already. If you want to inspire people, roll up your sleeves and get to work. People will follow the leader. People will be motivated by the leader. All right, I want you to think about, sort of in reciprocity, your interaction with children. Now, and we're going to talk about that. We've talked about that in the past. When you see a child, and you don't know the child particularly well, they tend to be shy, they're reserved, they go up to their mom, they hug their mom or their dad, all right, they cling. But if you smile at them and you say, hi, how are you? And you happen to go into their room and you say, oh, what's that? All right, and you notice them, what do? Then they start talking. Then you can't stop them from talking. The flow goes on and on and on and on. All right, so the idea is, just like when you see a little kid, what is it they want to do? They want to be noticed. They want to be told that they're doing something that's outstanding. They want to be able to teach you about, this is my doll, or this is my railroad, or this is my baseball glove, or whatever. Keep this in mind when you're talking with people. Give them the opportunity to teach you something. All right, the next part of influencing, the next factor we're going to talk about is consistency. Consistency means that you can be trusted. I want to give you a couple of examples of consistency. I had a couple of uncles. One of my uncles was Uncle Ben. And no, he wasn't Uncle Ben's rice, although I used to call him that all the time. And he was somebody that would always come up to me and always say, so Eli's dad, how's it going? Tell me what you're doing. Tell me about your ball game. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. And I would engage in conversation with him. And he was my favorite uncle. Absolutely. A close second was my Uncle Melvin. Now here's what my Uncle Melvin used to do. My birthday is in the beginning of March. And I was, as I am today, a huge Boston Celtics fan. Now, back when I was a young man, okay, let's say 8, 9, 10 years old, the Boston Celtics were winning championships every single year. But you can't ever count on that. And what my Uncle Melvin did was he promised me that he would go for my birthday and buy tickets to the finals game, which for somebody 8, 9, 10 years old is a tremendous thrill to see the basketball, my team of my dreams playing in the Boston Garden. However, number one, you couldn't count on the fact that they were going to win every year. Fortunately for me, they did. And then my Uncle Melvin would go and he would stand in line for a couple of hours and get 2 tickets. And so when they had the finals, which always at that time of year took place at the end of April, beginning of May, which was a couple of months after my birthday, he would deliver my birthday present to me. Eli's dad, you ready to go to the game? Let's go! And it was the time of my life. Uncle Melvin was very important to me. Consistency. All right. Now, let's talk about something else, all right? Consistency with your children, consistency with people. When people tell you that they're going to do something, that adds to their consistency. Let me give you an example. If I say, hey, Eli, when he was a little kid, if you clean up your room, we're going to go out for ice cream. I take him out for ice cream. He could count on the fact that I took him out for ice cream. So there was a deal that was made there. Another thing that was important, let me give you a sales qualifier. When I was out in the field selling these food and freezer programs, we wanted to make sure that if we sat down with a client and we did everything that we said we were going to be able to do, that they would be a buyer. So we needed to have a qualifier. So I would say to them, you know, Mom and Pop, or Mr. and Mrs. Client, or Fred and Ethel, whatever their names were, if I can show you how we can get you more food, better food, at half the price, delivered, and even guaranteed if the food is not good quality, we'll come out and we'll replace it for you, even if it's already eaten, would you place an order with me tonight? And once they said yes, they would place an order with me tonight, I was home, because I could do all of those things. I could prove to them and I could show them and do all of those things for them. So, but if you don't ask that qualifying question, you're going to get to the end and people are going to say, well, I want to think it over. If you want to be an influencer, and part of being a salesperson, obviously, is being an influencer, you want to have, if I can, will you? That's a mark of consistency. When people tell you something, when they tell you their values, when they tell you what they want, when they tell you what they'll do, when they verbalize it, that's one of the ways that you can be an effective influencer, because you're creating consistency. All right. Another part of consistency, when I used to send people out in the field, when I was in the insurance business, before they would go out in the field, they would look into the mirror and they would say, I will commit to making 2 presentations and 2 sales tonight. I can, I will, I must, and I will not be denied. And just to make sure, what I would do is I would send 2 people out together. Why? Because they both made that commitment into the mirror, they both verbalized it, and it's much more difficult to discourage 2 people than it is to discourage 1 person. 1 person will say, oh, well, I tried, I went out, I'm going home now. But when you have 2 people, you have both of them with consciences saying, we made that promise, we're going to go out and we're going to go out and write business. So you may think that when you have 2 people together that you're cutting your productive power in half, but actually what you're doing is you're multiplying it, because it's so much more difficult to discourage 2 people than it is to discourage only 1. Now, Mr. Cialdini likes to tell a story about a guy that owned a restaurant, and he would have people that would call in, they make reservations, and one of the things that they would do is they'd call and then they wouldn't show up for the reservation. And so he always used to have them say, please call if you have to change or cancel your reservation. But he was getting like a 30% no-show rate. So what did he do? He changed it. He said, will you please call if you have to change or cancel your reservation? And then they waited until the person would say, yes, I will call if I have to change my reservation. And their and their no-show rate went from 30% to 10%. All right, let's talk about another way of influencing. Social proof. Social proof means keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. All right, social proof is, as an example, when I was a kid, I was a young basketball player, I had to have Converse All-Star sneakers. Nowadays that's changed. Eli, you have to have Air Jordans or LeBron sneakers or Steph sneakers or whatever. Why? Socially acceptable. Those are the things. And people dress. Back in the day, people all wore bell bottoms. You don't see bell bottoms too much anymore. All right, fashion changes. All right, people keep up with the Joneses. It's social pressures. Okay, that's something that goes on. I'll give you a different example. Whenever I'm going to a new city or I'm going to a different city, I like to go on the computer and I like to look and see the various, like what hotel I might be staying at or what restaurants I might be eating at. And I go to one of the websites that has people that write letters in and say, oh, I went here and it was good, and I went here and it was awful, the service was bad, whatever. And they give you an indication. Why do I do that? Because I want to get other people's opinions. I want to see socially what's acceptable. I want to go to a good restaurant. It's a good restaurant, it's pricey, but it's worth it for a special occasion. You go to this restaurant, the service isn't so, whatever. All right, I go, that's why they have sites like that. Another thing, years ago when they first had Cyber Monday, there wasn't a whole lot of activity with it. Why? Because people didn't have faith in the internet in those days. They thought, well, I put it in, who knows where my money's going to go. Now it's socially acceptable, and Cyber Monday is either very close to or bigger than Black Friday. And speaking of Black Friday, what happens on Black Friday? Well, the stores sell you the idea, they influence you that we're having super doorbuster sales. Come on, Black Friday. That, all right, socially acceptable, so that you'll get up at the crack of dawn, knock somebody's head off to go into the store so you can buy a TV for 5 cents less than you'd be able to buy it next week. You get the idea. All right, we're socially acceptable. These are other ways that people influence. All right, another obvious way to influence is by, of course, getting people to like you. Now I have a series on sales that I'm very, very proud of. As a matter of fact, somebody sent me a note. They watched my series on sales and they said, wow, that was really good. That was really detailed. And I hadn't listened to it in a while. I went back and listened to it and I said to myself, wow, that was really good. That was really detailed. And part of that, those videos on sales talk about the approach and the warm-up, meeting somebody, finding out what their hot buttons are, getting them to like you, getting to establish a rapport with them. How do you do those things? Well, you find out what things they're interested in, what things you have in common with them. You make them an expert. You see things that they're interested in and you say, wow, tell me about that. If you see, if you go into somebody's house or you go into somebody's office and you see a picture and you say, wow, who's that? Or you see a trophy and you say, how did you win that trophy? They wouldn't put it there if they didn't want to tell you the story. Give them a chance to teach you something. That is one of the ways that you get people to like you. It increases rapport. Another way is if you establish yourself as an expert in the field. I'll give you an example. Let's suppose you're not feeling so good. All right, you got some congestion, whatever, and one of your friends says, you know what, I would definitely go to the drugstore and I would take this medication. It worked for me, it was great. And you might go and you might try it. On the other hand, if you go to see the doctor, who is a recognized expert, and the doctor says, no, this is what I want you to take, guess what you're going to do? Because you recognize the doctor as being an expert. So if you can establish yourself as an expert, then that's one of the ways that you're going to be able to influence people a little bit more, by being an authority figure, by having superior knowledge. Let me give you a fun example of how that worked for me when I was coaching basketball. As the basketball coach, I was coaching Frosh Soft kids, and I knew a lot more basketball than they did. That was easy for them to recognize, and so on. And right before the first game, I gave what I like to call my vitamin speech. So I had all the kids stand on the line, and I said, you know, it would be an awful shame if because you got some sort of a cold or you got sick a little bit that you weren't able, I mean, we practiced so hard that you weren't able to take part in the games. One of the things that I recommend you do is you take a daily multiple vitamin, just so that you give yourself that little extra chance that you're going to feel good, that you're going to be strong. All right? Well, the next time we had a game, one of the kids' moms, his name was Rick, okay, Rick's mom comes up to me and says, Coach, can I talk to you for a second? I said, sure. What can I help you with? She said, you know, I've been trying to get Rick to take vitamins now for I don't know how long, a couple of years anyway. All I know is one word from you, and now all of a sudden he wants to start taking vitamins. I need you to do me a favor. I said, sure, what can I do for you? She said, tell him to clean up his room, would you please? Okay, so I'll give you a different story. I had a friend that was in a tough spot. He had an possibility of having cancer, and so he had to go in for an exploratory operation. And needless to say, he was very unnerved. So I'm close with him. I spoke with him, and I said, you know what? You got to take it easy and so on. And I did my very best to comfort him, but I'm his friend, very familiar, didn't have a whole lot of effect. Now I happen to know of a minister that, a pastor that he admired a great deal. So I went and I saw the pastor. Now keep in mind, this pastor is the head of a church that gets like 13,000 people every Sunday to go. He's on video. I mean, this guy's a big deal, a very, very important person, and somebody that people respect, and they respect his opinion. So I went and I somehow got in to see him, and I told him my story. I told him my friend admired him, and I said, you know, I told him all these things, but because I'm his friend, he didn't really pay a lot of attention. I said to him, you know, it's kind of like when you tell your wife something and, you know, it just goes in one ear out the other, and then all of a sudden somebody else, a friend, says exactly the same thing, and, oh, it becomes tremendously good advice. You should have seen the look on the pastor's face. He said, Eli's dad, I know exactly what you're talking about. The same thing happens to me. I'll say something to my wife, she'll ignore it, and then somebody else will say it, and like all of a sudden, you know. As a matter of fact, Eli's dad, I saw a t-shirt that said, if a man is walking in a forest and his wife is not there to hear him, does that mean he's still wrong? Anyway, the story has a happy ending. I did get the pastor together with my friend. The pastor comforted him, followed up with a phone call after he had the exploratory operation, and things turned out okay. But one of the things as far as influence is concerned is, as an authority figure, once again, you will have some influence. The last one I want to talk about is scarcity. Now, did you ever go to a website and I go and I look to get the airplane tickets, there's like so many different websites where you can get airplane tickets, and I go to them and I look, and they have the price, and there's only 2 left. We only have 2 left. Or the commercial on TV, you have to buy before midnight tonight, and if you do, we will send you every record ever produced by the Beatles. Or people try and say, you have to do it now because this offer is not going to last. So these are things that influence people. All right, so we've gone over these are different skills that influence people, so keep them in mind. Now, what is it you're doing wrong when you try to influence people? Well, I'm going to get the quote from Robert Cialdini himself, who tells us what it is we're doing wrong. So listen to this. Most people always use their favorite approach to influence, the one that they like best. And that's a mistake. I have a colleague who's in the marketing department in an American university who told me that he spent the last 16 years looking to find the single best influence approach. And I saw him at a conference a while ago, and he stopped me and he said, Bob, I found it. I found the single best approach to influence. And it's not to have a single approach. That's a fool's game, to think that every situation will yield to the same tactic or strategy. You have to assess every situation in terms of what's truly available for you out there. Is there a genuine social proof? Then we should use it. Do we have a genuine scarcity issue that we can raise to the surface, a unique feature? Then we should use it. Do you have a genuine authority on the topic? Then use it. That's how you decide, not based on what tends to be your favorite approach, but using the one that aligns with what is truly inherent in the situation waiting to be employed. So if you want to be that super influencer, keep these 6 different approaches in mind and use the one, mix and match the one that works. And do you want to be Clark Kent or do you want to be Superman? This is one of the super skills that's going to help you advance, because if you want to further an idea and you don't have the money to see that idea go forward, how are you going to influence somebody to give you the funding for that, or to support you with that, or to come on board as one of your team members for that? Influence is a key superpower. All right? Now, let's go on to a thought for the day. And this is from Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you haven't read his book, I recommend you do so. And I quote, "So, the only way on earth to influence the other fellow is to talk about what he wants and show him how to get it." And because we never end a meeting on a philosophical note, let's get out there and charge! I'm Eli's dad.